Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I have a special guest who I'm going to bring on in a minute, but first I want to tell you about an experience that I'm going to do. I just signed up for this and I think you should check it out as well. Most of you know that we do sewing retreats in southern France at a place called Chateau Dumas. We also do textile tours to London, both of which will happen in 2022. August for Chateau Dumas and September for the London Textile Tour. And the woman who I work with is named Lizzie Holm, and she runs a company called Textile Retreats. And we've had a nice relationship for 6 or 7 years now, and she is amazing. And she is connected in that textile stitch world in the UK like nobody else I've ever met. And so she is doing some online experiences through her company called Textile Retreats. And one of the ones that just came to my attention yesterday is all about making paper things, three-dimensional paper items like shoes, sewing machines, lampshades, cameras, fantastic sculptural things, either hand-sewn or sewn by machine using beautiful papers. These can be papers from books, magazines, handmade papers, whatever. So here's a picture of what this particular class is going to be. It's all about making paper shoes. She's going to talk about making them by hand or by sewing machine. But you should check her out because her name is Jennifer Collier. She's the artist. And if you go to her website, madebyhandonline.com, there's a 3-minute little video about her process. It shows her sewing, it shows her in her studio, it shows her volumes of papers and magazines and books that she draws from, and it is really a fun little 3-minute listen and watch. So if you're interested in signing up for the class, then you want to go to textileretreats.com and sign up for the class. It's a recorded class, and so you don't have to have a particular time to watch it. You can watch it over any time that you want at your convenience. So check this out. This was really, really fun. I know that we probably are not really interested in wearing paper shoes. I don't know, maybe you are, but for sure, just these wonderful objects to have in your home. I think they're just exquisite. So check her out. She started out as a textile person and has drifted into working with paper. So she has that background of textiles and stitching and sewing that really translate into making these three-dimensional objects in paper. So check that out. Well, we have Alex. Alex is in the audience today. Now she's going to be on stage. My daughter Alex flew in from Cleveland last night. So I'm making you wear this because a year ago for Christmas, Alex wanted a plaid Flatiron coat. And I made this coat for you. Mm-hmm. And the sleeves are too short. And I had no scraps. And so the coat has hung in the closet in Topeka for a year.
However, I think Linda does these things on purpose to maybe have samples for her office.
Well, or something I can wear, because your arms are longer than mine. But you know what? I see this on you today, and I don't know. You know, we could almost like shorten the sleeves. I mean, there were some solutions, actually. One solution was to insert an inner ribbed sleeve, which I still think would be a cool idea. But I found another idea just yesterday. Here is a coat by Marnie. You can buy this coat for only $2,150. We could do that, but it has knit sleeves. It's a plaid coat with knit sleeves. And so we could take the sleeves out of this coat and just add totally new knit sleeves. I'd never thought about that.
It's pretty cool.
But it's an idea.
I like the blanket stitch on the...
Yeah, I think that's probably a hand blanket stitch in some kind of a yarn. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Mm-hmm. So you might get this coat again for Christmas.
Great.
If I get around to taking those sleeves out and putting those sleeves. But anyway, do the little twirl thing and See what,
Yeah, I like this coat. I put it on and forgot about it and might steal it back.
yeah, you might steal it back. So you are the manager of our So Confident program. So tell us what's
Yeah, we've
upcoming.
got some things coming up. Today is the day we're having our first ever stitch along. So Linda actually came up with this idea last week. We are doing the Borough inspired London jacket, and it's got some hand stitched details with these linen fabric pieces that are being attached to kind of just embellish the jacket. And so Linda is actually going to kind of walk through that process and teach you things like the running stitch in the back stitch and all kinds of embellishing techniques. So it's over Zoom today. It's at 2 p.m. Central Time. So if you're part of So Confident, that's exclusive to So Confident. We'd love to have you join us if you're part of that program, and you just get to, it's going to be very casual. You can stitch along with Linda if you'd like, or you can just kind of watch and observe. If you can't make it, we're going to record it and post it on your course page, so don't worry if you can't make it, but
Yeah.
that's today.
Yeah,
And
this is just a little time to kind of relax and stitch. If we were in England, we'd get our cup of tea.
Or a gin and tonic.
Or a gin and tonic, and I'm going to have my iced tea. Well, heaven forbid that we have ice, but yes. So just a chit chat to and fro. I'm going to demonstrate as needed and answer questions. Hopefully, those of you who are part of the So Confident program have started your stitching, or at least want to start your stitching, and this might launch you into getting that accomplished. So that's today. What else?
And Thursday we have our Zoom Q&A with So Confident members for the Borough Inspired London jacket. So that's 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Central Time for anyone part of So Confident. So get any of your questions answered for that project, as well as any other project we've done so far in So Confident. So we'll see you Thursday for that, for another Zoom series of Zoom sessions. And then on Monday we have our release of the November project. So lots coming up, and I don't think we've released what we're doing yet, but you have to tune into the Zoom session. We always give a little sneak peek of what's coming for the next month. So
yeah, and I'm excited about November's project. I think it's real wearable, really fun, a little bit edgy, for some of us older folks, of which I am one. So anyway, and then we're also in a planning mode for 2022. And Alex is here to kind of nail down the final details about that. You'll be hearing more about that November, late November, probably early December. So next year has a kind of a concept, a wardrobing concept, which we've heard from you that you're interested in that. So we're planning deep into the year, and I hope you'll enjoy that. All right, so today is Plaid Day. Plaids are everywhere. Are you seeing that?
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
I mean, we have plaid coats worn with jeans and cowboy boots. Big plaids, buffalo plaids, they're called. We had this one's only $800 from Isabel Morant. This is fun because this is a big plaid, but it's worn with polka dots and loafers. I love that idea. And seeing this reminded me that I have loafers in my stash of shoes that I haven't worn for a long time, and they're coming out this year because this is a loafer year. I saw a really cool pair of loafers last night from, how's it pronounced? Christian Louboutin? Is that how you pronounce it? Louboutin?
Something like that.
Something like that. And so it was a loafer, and all the stitch details, these were patent leather loafers, all the stitch details of the tongue and the zigzag stitching and the edging was all done in print on the patent leather. Oh, I thought that was so cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, and those are probably, I didn't check the price, but they're not coming to my house either. And this one is from a brand that I'd never heard of, Maison Common. Have you heard of that? I hadn't either. Well, you can have this coat for only $2,795. So, bottom line, this is the year of the plaid, and you can make your own plaid something for a lot less than any of those prices. So we have the flat iron. And let's show this flat iron while we have it up here. This isn't a plaid exactly, but it's in the flavor of a big graphic type motif. Obviously, she's wearing it open, but you can wear it closed up. It has 3 snaps, which is an unusual idea. It has 2 here and 1 here, so it forms this little waterfall drape of the collar. You can wear the collar kind of up around your neck like you have to in Cleveland with the wind, right? It has patch pockets. Now, this is not a super long coat, but it certainly can be. If you need a floor length coat or an ankle length coat, it's an easy coat to lengthen because it's just, I'm sure we have lengthen and shorten lines somewhere on this pattern because we always do, but honestly, I think you can probably lengthen this one from the bottom. I have on the shorter version of the Flatiron in just a white wool and nylon, not nylon, wool and rayon boucle. And the difference between the 2 styles, the shorter one and the longer one, is that the sleeve on the coat is fuller. You can see on Alex how it kind of flares out a little bit. And the sleeve on the jacket is a little bit narrower, and the pockets are different sizes. The pocket on the jacket is a little bit smaller than the big deep pocket on the coat. So, simple coat to make. It's unlined, has turned edges, and I'll talk about a different kind of edge in a minute. So let's put a couple other coats on you, Alex. So here's a plaid coat that's in a reversible fabric, and I don't know, I don't think we were smart enough to make it reversible, but that sure would have been a good idea.
My favorite color.
I know, this is your favorite color. Alex is getting ready to upholster a couple of chairs, and I'm thinking that the fuchsia is about what it's going to be. Yeah. But isn't this an interesting combination of color, this fuchsia and this gray, blue, different scale plaid, from larger scale to smaller scale? But this is a two-faced fabric, so it's an opportunity to do that. Because the wrong side of the fabric shows, you do want to select a fabric that looks good on both sides. So that's that one. We have a couple of other styles of things that work as well. So one of my favorite garments that goes back a ways for us is the Equinox Jacket. This is fun because it's basically one pattern piece. It's kind of like geometry to put together. It's really also to put on, apparently. So it has this big collar, big sleeves, and it can button. I know it can button. Here, here it goes. There we go. Now it's short in the back, so turn around. And this ruched, so to speak, at the back because it has a little, I'll call it belt, that's buttoned to the inside. So it forms this shape. And then it has facings, so the edges are faced, and we've done it in our famous black and white check that we talk about all the time. Turn up the cuffs. Now, I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again because it's so funny. All right, so take that off and put it on upside down. This is what happened to us at a fashion show in Puyallup, Washington. The model came out with it on upside down.
Oh, well, that kind of works.
I'll just put it on your coat for a minute. All right, totally different look. Now turn around. So anyway, it was hilarious. The audience roared, I roared. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We have a new garment. But you know, these garments are inspired by the designer Issey Miyake, and a lot of his designs can be worn upside down. So it's not exactly unintentional that it might have been designed this way. Anyway, really fun, Equinox Jacket.
Love it. I
Yeah.
love the plaid detail with it too.
Yeah. Okay. And then, actually, you can probably leave that on if you want. So don't forget that you don't have to make a coat, that you can make a skirt. This is our 8th Avenue skirt. And one of the nice things about this is that the main part of the skirt is cut pretty much on the straighted grain, so the plaids are pretty squared up. But the side piece is on the bias, so there's no matching of anything there. You can just let that do its thing, and the plaid will be on the diagonal. But I think that's a fantastic skirt made in a coating fabric.
Love it.
All right. I think you're excused.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. All right. So there are a couple of interesting techniques about this coat. We have a very signature detail in a lot of our patterns. The flat iron, the zona. I can't even really name all of them at this point, but you can see that you have a shoulder seam that dies into a point, and then that makes a turn and forms the neck seam. Now, this is at first glance a little tricky, but we have a little tutorial on how to do this that's a little more visual than just the illustrations in the guide sheet. Even though the guide sheet explains it quite well, the photography is a little bit different in the tutorial. So we are offering that little tutorial. I call it little. It's only because it's shorter than a lot of our tutorials. But if you end up buying the Flatiron pattern, either print or digital, that tutorial will be part of your purchase, and it's free with that purchase. So if it's a digital pattern, you will get that tutorial in your account along with the download for the pattern. If you're buying the print version of this, then that will still be in your account, but don't be surprised when you get a notice that says your download is ready. You've purchased a printed pattern, but your download is for this technique. So hopefully that clears that up. But that's a really unique detail, and we talk about how to sew it basically in 4 segments. This is not a detail that you can sew in all one fell swoop. I like to sew the shoulders, and then I like to sew even the neck in 2 parts as well. It's so much easier. But of course, marking this point is essential. That is the key. And stay stitching to that point and being able to clip completely into that point is what opens that up and allows these pieces to fall together and sew together. So that's one feature of this coat that I really like. One of the other things that comes with the pattern is a template for these pockets so that you can get really perfect pockets. We give you a pattern piece. We tell you to cut it out of something like tag board or a manila file folder to this exact shape, and then you're going to be able to press the hem allowances, seam allowances of the pockets up and over that template so you have perfect edges and a perfect shape that's symmetrical. I always had that trouble, especially on the curved one of this jacket. To get these 2 curves exactly the same is almost impossible unless you have a template. So that's included with the pattern. You can do flat felt seams, you can do standard seams, you can do overlapping seams. All of those options are given to you. The other element to this is a turned hem. But sometimes I like to do something different. For instance, maybe a bound edge using a knit fabric. Now this is a little stripe that I've applied to just this sweater knit. But that would make a nice edge on this. It could be an accent, it could be a similar color, but I love that finished edge. And all you do is just cut a strip of knit and sew it the distance of the width that you want the final binding. And then you bring that around, covering that raw edge, and stitch in the ditch. And trim off whatever the excess is beyond that stitching. It's so easy. So think about that for your hem option. Now we recommend snaps for this garment. And we have 3 really cool snaps. We have these white kind of pearlized snaps. You need big snaps for this big coat. You just can't use any old snap. So we have the white pearl. We have a brand new one that is kind of a, I don't know, tortoise? No, marbleized? Can you see that? Okay. Yeah. And we have our gunmetal. That's the one we've had for a long time. But the white and the tortoise. And you can see that the detail on this is to sew on a snap through a single layer, you want to think about what it's going to look like on the right side of the fabric. So I've sewn this with a little kind of star stitching that actually shows. So on this side, it's sewn in a normal way, but you can draw the thread through and form a little pattern of some sort of thread on the outer part of the fabric, which I think is a cool detail. Now, if you don't like snaps and you want to do something else, well, just like the Equinox, this is a really interesting method of a bound buttonhole, where the lips of the buttonhole are really wide and featured on one side, and on the other side you see the entire patch that's used to make the buttonhole. I have a little better sample here. So here would be one side, and you would see the top stitching, and the other side would be this. And I think that really can be fun. You could use a fabric. You could use something like ultra suede or leather. So you just would leave those edges raw, and it'd make a beautiful buttonhole on this coat. Or you can do a traditional bound buttonhole. To do a traditional bound buttonhole, I do suggest that you create a facing, because you need something to finish the back side. So this method for this coat, to me, is the better one. But we do have a tutorial called 2 Bound Buttonholes, and both of these methods are in that tutorial. Now, if you want to do a flat felled seam, let's talk about that. We have, I don't know about you, but I think flat felled seams, I think they're beautiful, and I think they're really hard if you do them in a traditional way. The traditional way is to sew a seam right sides together, trim one of the seams back to, let's say, 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch, and then tuck that longer, wider seam allowance over that, and try to get that even, especially on bulky fabrics. So you want to think about your seam allowance widths before you cut things out. Let's say you want to do a flat felled seam on a bulkier fabric. Then you probably want more than a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Maybe 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, but you have to think about that ahead of time. So you know what I'm going to say next. You make a sample, which all of us fail to do, but it's the only way to work things out. So you start by, this is the best method I've ever seen, and I wish I could remember where I learned it. I know I learned it from a teacher in San Francisco at the sewing workshop, possibly Tara Arnold, I'm not sure, but I'm going to give her credit even if it wasn't her. So let's say this is fabric, and this is the right side of your fabric. You're going to press 1/2. Now I've pressed something large here so you can see it, but 1/2 of the seam allowance to the right side. And then on the corresponding piece of fabric, you would have removed, cut away the seam allowance. So that's gone. So with the right sides together, you're simply going to put those insert the one fabric into the fold of the under fabric, like that. And then you're going to stitch right next to that raw edge. really close. It's more important to be an even distance from this edge than it is to be exactly perfect on that raw edge, because that line of stitching is going to show ultimately. So then this fabric gets folded over to cover that. And now got to make it look like this. All right, so I'm folding over. There we go. All right. So now all I'm going to do is stitch next to the fold. And that creates the 2 rows of stitching on the wrong side of the fabric and 1 row of stitching on the right side of the fabric. If you want the 2 rows of stitching on the right side, then you start completely different from at the beginning. And instead of pressing that half of a seam allowance to the right side, you would press that half seam allowance to the wrong side. That just reverses the process. Either one. It tends to be, you know, you see the 2 rows of stitching on the outside of a man's shirt, for example, but not necessarily on women's wear. It's a fine line. Do whatever you want, but make a sample. All of a sudden, you're not having to tuck anything under. It's all nailed down for you. It is a super, super easy way to do a flat felt seam on a straight edge or on a curve. And when you're doing it on a curve, the only difference is I will stay stitch my half seam allowance first and press that seam allowance to the right side, and I might have to clip it to allow it to open up so that when you're actually sewing it, you're still sewing something straight. So I hope you like that method. We've showed this in a few of our patterns. Haven't for a while, but some of our older patterns do have flat felt seams, and it's a great technique. All right, let's look at some fabric. So, Alex, you want to help me a minute? Let's get Erin around here to show her Memphis dress made in a plaid. And then you and I can handle the fabrics. Yeah. So this is the Memphis dress. Hello. In a plaid knit. Now Kathy made this dress, and Kathy made 0 effort to match any plaids, which I thought was kind of cool. Or maybe she did, and maybe this is the way she planned it. I haven't talked to her for a while about this. But you can see that it doesn't really line up. It sort of does, but it's shifted a little bit. But you know, that's what I think features the elements of this garment that are unique, which is this insertion on the side that creates the fullness. So I think this is really cute. But now this requires a knit fabric, and we have a couple of knit fabrics. So Alex, help me get the knit fabrics out here. And so we have these 2 plaid knits, and they're actually French terries, but super drapey, just the right width, just the right weight, not width. It's not the right width too. But this is already a plaid on the diagonal. So that's an interesting thing to think about, the main part of the dress being on the diagonal and the insertion being on the straight. So you can figure out how you want to run this, but I love this.
It feels really nice too.
I know, it's so soft and nice and super drapey. So this is one colorway. This fabric is a little bit of poly and rayon and spandex. And then this is the other colorway, this beautiful gray and deep, kind of khaki and deep cream and, I don't know, sort of a cinnamon color. I think that's really gorgeous. So think about making yourself a dress or a skirt. Actually, you could make a shirt out of this. It's so lightweight. That's really nice. All right. Then for the coatings, we have more of this, not a lot more of this, but this happened to be a piece that, a cut from this. But isn't this an incredible wool? The pattern actually goes the other way. So you take that end, yeah. So it has kind of a vertical meandering of stems, leaves. It's very organic. I just love this beautiful jade green and burgundy. Interesting combination. That's a printed wool. Now, these are woven. So now some of these are various fibers. All of them have wool. Some of them have other things like polyester and rayon blends. We're not exactly sure. But this one has a soft pile flavor to one side, and the reverse side does not have the pile. So you could use either side. I think this is the face normally, the softer side or the fuzzier side, but this is a fantastic plaid. And this is it's not quite an even plaid, it's almost an even plaid, but this is a little different dimension. Whenever you're ordering plaid fabrics for anything, the rule of thumb is you order an extra repeat per major pattern piece. So let's say you have 2 fronts and a back and 2 sleeves. I would probably order at least 3 extra plaids, repeats. I think you wouldn't maybe have to think about the sleeves too much, but the 2 fronts and the back. Just order another, whatever the repeat says that it is, then that's what you need to think about for matching. So that's one. This one, I don't know, there's something really happy about this one to me. It's a simpler plaid and, of course, just 2 colors, but I don't know, I really like it. So this could make a coat, it could make a shorter jacket, make a great skirt. That 8th Avenue skirt in this would be really cool. What would you wear with an 8th Avenue skirt made out of this?
The Equinox.
You could make the Equinox. You could wear a chunky sweater.
A sweatery Eureka or something.
A sweatery Eureka with some long sleeves. You could wear a Picasso top like what you have on. Yeah, and you could punch it with some weird color. I mean, it wouldn't have to be off-white or orange. It could be, I don't know. Oh, it could be charcoal. It could be just some kind of, or it could be teal, blue, green with it. Purple. Yeah. Have some fun with it.
Yeah.
This one's a little more classic. This is the other side of it, technically. The side with the fuzz is this side. And when I say fuzz, I don't mean, we're not talking fur here. We're talking about just a nap. So you do have to pay attention to that as well with some of these plaids. So not only do you have plaids to work with, but you have a nap to work with as well. So all the pattern pieces need to be laid in the same direction. Now, I'm not going to talk about matching plaids here in this Facebook Live, but was it 2 weeks ago? It was September 14th. No, that's a month ago. Gosh, time flies. I did a Facebook Live on matching stripes and how to match the stripes using FusiWeb. It's the same process. So you might want to revisit that Facebook Live on how to match stripes as to how to cut out your plaids and how to match your plaids. It's the same process. Now this is not a plaid, but it's a wonderful texture, and it's more of a sweater knit, so it'd make a great, fantastic Equinox jacket. And put that black and white check with it that you bought last week when we were talking about black and white checks. Yeah. Great texture. Little different texture on each side. I think either side can be used. One has a little more pop to it than the other, but either one would work, and both sides can show. I think this is Erin. Is this your favorite? Did you tell me?
Oh, no, but they're all beautiful. I can't decide.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you liked this one. Maybe it's Deb that really likes this one. I think it's Deb. But this reminded me of that picture. Well, I've lost it now. Well, I don't know. I thought I had one.
This one?
Oh, it's this one. Yes. There it is. Just about. There it is. With chunky boots, big handbag, graphic T-shirt, streetwise. Yeah. There you go. All right. This one, that reminded me of this one. With the jeans and the cowboy boots.
Mm-hmm. Those boots are coming back.
I know. I might have to dig mine
Tall
out.
jeans. Mm-hmm.
I'll bet, you know, shoes that used to fit me don't fit me anymore. I think it's because my feet have grown as I've gotten older. What is it about? My ears got bigger and my feet got bigger. I just hate that.
This is cool.
All right. Now, this one is a wonderful texture that we just got in. It came from Belgium. And it is a combination of wool and rayon, and I've kind of forgotten now, but 3 fibers. It kind of has the flavor of a cotton texture, but this would make a wonderful weight of it for a transition coat. It would not be as warm, I don't think, as some of these wool plaids, but it certainly would be the kind of coat. If I had a Flatiron jacket out of this, I'd be throwing this on with just about everything I wear. From jeans to black pants, yes, put it with some silk. It's gorgeous. And
Kind of reminds me of the Equinox fabric too.
it does.
Kind of
Yeah.
a looser,
Yep.
drapier sweater kind of.
Yep. And then we have a little bit of this left. I think this is interesting. It has a wrong side that's also, I don't know if it's a right side or wrong side to tell you the truth, but the yarns that are, quote, sewn to the right side are then felted on the other side, and it's really fun. We probably only have maybe a couple of orders of that on that bolt. And then we've got another one kind of like that. This wants to collapse, so you can see how the side changes from the sort of couched ribbon side to a more felted side. And it would be a vertical stripe coming off the bolt. And we have a little bit of this left that kind of looks like the coat on the dress form. It's very, I'm having a little bit of a problem thinking Pendleton. That's the word I was trying to come up with, a Pendleton type look, Southwestern, Ecot. So those are our fabrics. All right, do we have any questions?
You have to repeat this one. Can you repeat maybe what you have on and some of the other patterns that you talked about?
All right, we're going to repeat what I have on and some of the other patterns. I have on the Flatiron Jacket. It's part of the Flatiron Coat and Jacket pattern, so it's a little bit shorter than the coat. The pocket's a little bit smaller, and the sleeve is a little more tapered. But I've made it just like the pattern, and I've used all raw edges because the fabric didn't ravel. I'm wearing it over my pencil pants in Ponte knit, and I just have on a purchased t-shirt, but I love this t-shirt because it kind of, I saw that picture yesterday when I was pulling out pictures of the graphic t-shirt underneath the coat, and I thought, I have a t-shirt that has writing on it too. All right, so this is the Flatiron Coat on the dress form. This is the Flatiron Coat, also in a plaid. Another flat iron. This is an Equinox, and I, for some reason, have no hanger, and I don't know why. But this is the Equinox Jacket. And the 8th Avenue skirt, and the Memphis dress that Erin has on. So all of those patterns are on sale this week. The Flatiron is both printed and digital. The 8th Avenue is print only.
And digital.
Oh, it is digital. Okay.
The short version is digital.
The short version is digital. Okay. And the Equinox is print only. Yeah. And the Memphis is
Both.
both. We have spent a lot of time this year gearing up to digitize a lot of patterns. So I've kind of lost track of what we've done on that. Erin and Betsy know exactly what's what, but I'm kind of semi in the dark about that.
So you were talking about earlier about making the Alex's flat iron knit sleeves. How would you do that?
Well, I would remove those sleeves and I would take the sleeve pattern from the Flatiron, use the sleeve head, figure out the width that I want at the wrist, whether she wants it tight or a little bit loose, and then I would redraw the seam line to the circumference that I want at the bottom. But you start with the original pattern, so you know it fits into the arm's eye.
Can you post the
Now
name
let me back up a minute, because this picture is interesting. This is another way to go. You can see how the sleeve arm's eyes are big. So you could take a sleeve from, let's say, the swing tee or another long-sleeved t-shirt and literally sew that into the garment and leave the hem of the edge of the arm's eye exposed. So you have a big arm's eye of the coat and a smaller sleeve coming out of it. That's a different way to go. I'd have to think about all that.
You also could do that out of the sleeve that she already has. Do you remember like in the 80s where they had like the knit sleeves that came out of the coats?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I thought of.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be next Christmas, Alex, for you on this coat. We'll see.
Could you put a shawl collar on the Flatiron?
Shawl collar on the Flatiron. Well, I don't know why this couldn't be reshaped. I don't know why not.
All the designers that you mentioned, the images that you showed, can we post those designers? Do we have all those designers?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone over all the patterns that you've shown. Oh, Alex, what black top are you wearing? Picasso. She's wearing the Picasso in a black jersey. How do you finish the sharp shoulder and neckline corner on the inside of the Flatiron?
It is finished with a facing. So that facing is sewn at the neck and across the shoulder, and it totally covers up the seam allowances.
I'm just going to point out. That's the end of the facing, and that's the shoulder seam there. So you mentioned the tutorial, the Flatiron tutorial.
Yeah.
So we had a couple questions actually about people who have already purchased the Flatiron. Will they get the tutorial?
Well, not unless you ask us, because it would be difficult for us to go back. And how far do we go back and all of that. But just email us. Email Betsy at sewingworkshop.com, and she can help you with that.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible it's in their account if they bought it online. If they go back to that order,
okay,
it's possible that it shows up in that underneath that purchase.
Okay. Are you mic'd?
Yes.
Okay, mm-hmm. So they heard that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, check it out. It might be there.
How would you bind the Flatiron if your binding is a woven?
I would bind it. First of all, if it's a woven, it would need to be cut on the bias, unlike a knit, which can be cut on the straight of grain. And I would do what's called a double binding, meaning I would calculate 6 times the finished width of the binding. I'd press the binding in half, wrong sides together, sew all the raw edges together, and bring it around and either top stitch it or hand stitch it. We do have a binding tutorial that maybe Betsy can post that has various binding techniques in woven fabrics. That's just one. We have one that I love that I learned from Jean Casacedo that has one width. In fact, we have it in the Chateau coat pattern where it's narrow on the outside and wider on the underside. That is a very cool binding.
So the Flatiron you have on, Linda, does it have snaps or do you just wear it open?
I just wear it open. It could have snaps, but it doesn't. I don't believe we put snaps on the jacket pattern. The other thing that's different about the jacket pattern is that the back is a little bit longer than the front, which is not the case in the coat, although it could be.
Okay.
By the way, I made this recently in a fleece for a bathrobe and put a belt on it. It was pretty great.
It might have to be a Facebook Live. Okay, so the snap, the marbleized snap that you showed, can you talk about the colors that are in that?
Yeah. All right, I would say that the base of the colors is black. It's a black snap with marbleized green, pink, greens and pinks. Maybe I don't know if you can see it or not. Does the colors show up?
A little bit, but it's not.
Yeah.
Check out the website for
Yeah, we have good photographs
images.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is interesting because this has a little groove in it that goes from hole to hole. So it's telling you that you would secure it at the holes and then lead the thread through the groove to the next hole. That would be a nice, I think that's the only one that does that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've never seen that before.
Would it be possible to line the flat iron?
Yes, anything can be lined. I'd be a little bit inclined to do what I call a hybrid, where I would make two coats, an outer coat and an inner coat, and then I would bring the lining to this folded edge and bring this edge over. So that's more of an underlining technique at the edges. But that is difficult to get linings and outer fabrics and linings to hang together without one or the other shifting and bubbling and hanging differently. So you're probably going to need a dress form in order to put that on there and then pin so that you know you're not getting things hung up someplace. It's not easy to do, but it can be done. Now, let me go back. If you want to do a traditional lining of the flat iron, then you're going to create some facings, deeper hems, and you're going to create a lining pattern that is smaller than the coat. And then, yes, you can bag the lining and do it in a traditional way.
Okay, so would you use clear thread when you're putting on a snap?
No, I like the idea of a decorative thread or a matching thread. You can use clear, but I think part of a snap is that perfect sewing of the wrapping at the holes or the, it's not a blanket stitch, or is it a blanket stitch? Where it's drawn up and, boy, the way I sew on snaps is to loop it so that it's tied at the edge. That's a blanket stitch. Yeah. But there's no problem. If you don't like the stitching, invisible thread is fine. I just don't happen to own any of that, and I'm probably going to just... In fact, many times I like to feature the stitching on a snap.
So I think this came in when you were doing your stitching techniques. It says, why wouldn't you use a cover stitch for the seams? Maybe instead?
Instead of
your flat-filled seam. I think that's when it came in. This question.
So, yeah, I'd like to know more about what the thinking is there. Is it an overlapping seam and cover stitched? Maybe. Is it a seam that's pressed one way and covered stitched? Is it you're cutting away one seam allowance, leaving the other, and then cover stitching? I'm not sure. I'd be more curious about the thinking process on that question.
I can see if she said anything. I don't see any response.
Okay. You know, we talked about something last week, and I think we're going to implement it next week. We forgot about it this week. Because Erin has to scroll through and find your questions, which we love, by the way, I think we're going to have you put your questions in capital letters, perhaps, so you can identify what's a question versus a comment. Or we're going to give you some funny tag word to start out the question so she can just immediately go to questions.
That would be nice.
We'll give some thought to that and maybe implement that next week.
What does your t-shirt say?
My t-shirt, first of all, what does it say?
Well, it says all together now in all kinds of languages.
Yes. This is a shirt by Stella McCartney. She's a daughter of a Beatle, and she did a whole Beatle collection. And I bought this t-shirt. It was the only thing I could afford in her whole store when we were in London, when you lived in London and I visited you. I went into her store, saw this Beatle collection, fantastic clothes. So yes, this is a Beatle song in all kinds of languages.
The fabric from Belgium, is it a knit or a woven?
The fabric from Belgium is a woven.
Okay. Could you make the Equinox out of French terry?
Oh, absolutely. The Equinox in a French terry would be great. It'd be great in a fleece. Yep.
I'm 5 foot. Would this jacket be too overwhelming for my height?
The Equinox or the Flatiron?
I'm guessing the Flatiron.
No, I don't think so. I think that one thing you could consider doing, there's a difference in the overlap between the jacket and the coat. The jacket has less overlap, so you might put the jacket cut edges of the front on your coat so you have less stuff in the front. You could also taper the sleeve a little bit, or what you might want to do is use the jacket pattern and lengthen it the length of the coat. I think that's what you should do as a smaller person.
How would you lengthen the Chateau jacket sleeve?
I think I would just extend the lines. I'd have to look at that. I haven't looked at that for a while, but Chateau coat sleeves. Yeah, I would just extend each line to a width, to a length that you want, and a circumference that you want at the opening of the sleeve.
And then the 8th Avenue, can you lengthen the 8th Avenue?
Yes, you can lengthen the 8th Avenue. Do we have lengthen and shorten lines on it? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. In the printed pattern, we do have the 2 different lengths.
Right.
For the skirt, but we do
Right.
only have the short version in the digital
Right.
pattern.
But it's an easy. I would just on the skirt pattern. I would determine how long you want. This basic front and back is pretty much rectangular. It's a little bit diagonal on one side. Yeah, just figure out how much you want this length, and then you would just copy this curve and figure out how the match distance here, and then just retrace that bottom curve at that point. I've sometimes lessened the acuity of this curve when I've made this skirt, so it's not as pointed. I don't know why I've done that, but I have. If it gets too long, that is too much of a dip, I think, on the long one.
If you lengthen the Flatiron jacket, would you add walking ease?
You know, on this kind of jacket, no reason why you can't. If you're making it in a plaid, no. But in another fabric, absolutely, you can.
Okay, can you repeat the type of fabric that you have on in your Flatiron jacket?
I have on a fabric that we sell a lot of and have for years, and it's wool and rayon, and it's a boucle, and it's a knit.
Is there any two-sided fabrics like the pink and gray in the sale fabrics? that
No,
have?
we don't have any two-sided like that.
Is there a trick to folding the edge of the Flatiron at the corners in a wool fabric?
Like this right here,
Yes.
we do a miter, so it's a sewn corner. This is pretty heavy fabric, and that looks really good. So that's in the instructions.
Are these wools scratchy?
No, and I'm the person to ask. I can't do scratchy fabrics. They're very soft. Very soft.
Okay.
I don't think they're scratchy at all.
All right. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so we have patterns on sale, Flatiron, print and digital, 8th Avenue, print and digital, Equinox, print, Memphis, print and digital. We have the tutorial, 2-bound buttonholes on sale. If you order the Flatiron pattern, either print or digital, you do get the free tutorial on sewing this neck. All the fabrics are on sale. That's it.
Okay, and then we did have one last question here. So the new fabric from Belgium, is that good on both sides? Could you use both sides?
Absolutely. It's totally identical on both sides. Plus it has kind of a cool selvage. So there's opportunity there for something interesting.
Okay.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.